Assalamu alaikum, ahlan wa sahlan, hello and welcome to the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair's virtual sessions and to this conversation in particular with the wonderful Lemn Sissa. My name is Julia Wheeler and it's my absolute pleasure to be here today to talk with Lemn about this book, My Name is Why, his memoir, and I'm sure about lots of other things as well. Lemn, welcome. Let me begin by asking you, where are you, how are you, and how much poetry writing is going on?
Well, thank you for asking me, Julia. I'm at home in East London and I am a judge for the Booker Prize this year, which means that I'm spending this time reading books and not writing poetry, to be honest. Yeah.
And how are you finding it in isolation?
Well, there is no lockdown in the imagination, so it's an opportunity for me to read, really. You know, I was always told that to be a better writer, you need to be a good reader. So this is a perfect opportunity for that. Yeah, it's all right, you know. So I mean, some days I feel up, and some days I feel down, and you know, it's like a seesaw. It's like being on a seesaw emotionally. But there is an even keel somewhere in that, you know. It's an interesting thought experiment. Who are we when we're alone, you know?
And confronting ourselves, actually.
Yeah.
Just to see what's the person who in this potentially, you know, it is a stressful situation, and there are different extremes within that. That spectrum. How do I behave, and am I pleased and proud of the way I behave, or actually could I do a better job?
Yeah, I totally agree. You see your thought patterns. You know, it's like being on Brighton Beach. Brighton's deeply in the south of England, and you look out and you see, I think it's swallows. The murmuration, the patterns they make.
Was it swallows or starlings?
I think it's starlings.
Yes,
yeah, I think you're right. It's starlings, and the patterns they make in the air, and it's a bit like that in isolation. You're looking out into this vast ocean and seeing tides and patterns of yourself. You know, so, yeah.
But it's interesting that you mentioned Brighton, because this was actually, you've written in your blog that this was actually meant to be one of the most exciting months of your career. And one of the things within that was the Brighton Festival, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was the guest director of Brighton Festival. If you imagine this festival in Abu Dhabi, you know, it's as if that is my festival. You know, it's the same. It would have been the same in Brighton, in England. And the festival lasted the whole month of May, so I would have been in the sunshine of Brighton with a sea view from my hotel, welcoming international artists from all over the world. And that's tautology, that, isn't it? Welcoming international artists from all over the world. But yeah, and my book, the paperback of my book was coming out, and there's a big television, BBC are making a big film on me, which was coming out in May, and it's all gone.
But it does give you more time for reading. Let's talk about that paperback, because I think this is the first time the paperback's been seen anywhere, isn't it? Go on, show us.
Yes, this is. I've just received this through the post. The publication day was supposed to be in May, in the middle of May, and now it's going to be put back till July the 2nd. But this is the paperback. There's something quite, I think, unique about books, that they can launch twice. You know, it's a strange thing when you think about it. They launched the hardback, and that comes out, and then, you know, and then for some reason, the same book, but in paperback, comes out, what, 6 months, a year later, or however long. And it's a strange anomaly of publishing.
I guess it gives you a second bite of the cherry, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I was speaking to my publisher about how well the paperback will do if the hardback has come out already, and normally, and with this book in particular, they wanted it to do just as well. So it's interesting. Look, there are differences which may not mean a lot to other people, but it's worth seeing what it feels like for a writer to see two of the same book come out within a year of each other. This one is a little smaller, the paperback. What's beautiful about the paperback is that it has the reviews from the newspapers inside of it. I'm sorry, I'm as a writer, you become like a little bit of an anorak, for publishing. You know what I mean? You look at books and you think, how did that do that? And like, for example, this book is slightly bigger than your average hardback, I think. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, it's your baby, isn't it? And actually you've given birth to it twice, Lemn. So well done.
Yeah.
But so, how much notice, and perhaps how much more notice have you given to the review side of things, because you've presumably spent longer on this memoir than you might do on certainly individual poems?
Oh yeah.
So do you take things more to heart?
It would be easy to say no, I don't, but I do. I mean, I have with this book, because it's a memoir and it's so personal. So it has been very well accepted, which is really a blessing. You should never take that for granted. Yeah, never take that for granted. So yeah, I've read every review and every interview. Yeah, I have. I would be less likely to do that with poetry. But with my memoir, there was so much riding on this. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I read everything. Writers don't say that, do they? They say, I never read my reviews, blah, blah, blah.
Or they say, I think some people sort of say, send me the good ones, I don't want to see. But it's very difficult, though, just as a human being, not to receive that feedback. And if everybody else is reading the feedback, then be odd perhaps not to.
Yes, it would. Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. I mean, you can read a review. Sorry, Julia, but
go ahead.
To say, you can read a review, but what you do with that information then is up to you. So it's like somebody giving you advice that you don't know. You can listen to what they're saying, but you don't have to let it. You have a protection. You have to protect yourself from being hurt and damaged, because that's my responsibility as a public figure in this instance. My responsibility is not to make everything personal.
But it's so difficult when it's a memoir, and it's a beautifully written memoir, but it goes so deep inside you. Tell us about really the essence of the book and how you've created it and brought the story together.
I didn't know what my name was until I was 16 years of age. My mum came to this country, to England, from Ethiopia in the 60s, and she wanted me fostered for a short period of time. I never saw her, I didn't see her again in my childhood.
But within that, there is so much emotion, as we'd obviously expect, but there's a lot of tenderness. There's you as that young child, and your thoughts and your memories, and so cleverly written between your lyrical prose. You've interspersed government documents, basically. Yes. social workers' documents and so on, which you kept in the type, haven't you? Which actually really brings it out.
I think it does.
So well, just perhaps give us an idea of your early childhood, the family that did you and your relationship with them.
Well, I was fostered by a family from the northwest of England who were quite religious in terms of Christianity, and they were Baptist. They had the Baptist faith, which is a particular wing of Christianity, and they tried their best, but it was probably the worst. They said that they were my parents forever, and that's what I believed. So from being 2 months old, 6 months old, to 12 years of age, I believed that they were my mum and dad, and they would be forever. And at 12 years of age, they banished me from their home, and put me into an institution. I was then held in 4 different institutions for 5 years until I was 17 years of age. And then at 17, I was released, banished again, to be frank. So at 17 or 18 years of age, I had nobody to look back to who would account for my childhood. The foster family, they wouldn't speak to me. The children's homes, the staff will move on, etc. You don't go back to the children's homes, essentially. So I had no memory of me, nobody to hold that memory in mind. I didn't have an unreliable narrator, to me, which is often what family is, a series of unreliable narrators. And somehow, as an adult, I managed life. I did manage it. I did manage my way through life. I did become the writer that I am. At 21, I had a double page in The Guardian describing a book that I'd written. It's funny because when you look back, you think, well, this guy has been blessed. He's lucky. But the way I felt is that every single achievement that I made, I would look over my shoulder and there's no one. There was no family, there was no mother, no father when my first book was published, when that article came in The Guardian. Nobody from my past was calling me to say, well done. Or sometimes we want to prove ourselves, don't we, to our parents, even if we don't want to speak to them, we want to say, ha ha, look what I did. There was nobody to do that to. There was nobody who held me in mind. So the more accolades I achieved, which people would perceive as success, the worse I felt inside. Because it was more obvious what I didn't have. Does that make sense, Julia?
It does make sense. I wonder then if you, as you've gone through life, have you been able to redefine family? And are there people that you now do say, look, I'm proud of this, or that you're particularly pleased when they notice?
Well, we work with what we've got. So I guess now that I've found my family around the world, my birth family, I guess that I really do love it when I hear from them. But I have a relationship with friends, which is very meaningful to me. And now, to be honest, I have a relationship with myself where I don't feel that loss, you know. But as I said at the beginning, when somebody compliments you or somebody criticizes you, one must listen to them when it's concerning my work or in a review. But that doesn't mean to say that I have to let that hurt me. You know, you become quite strong in that way as a writer, I think. And I think it's similar with family. I'm aware of what I haven't got. And I'm aware of it all of the time. But what I do with that awareness, that's the key. You know, so I don't need to create a family that I don't have, because I don't want to replace something. I don't want to trick myself. But what I do with all of this information, you know, in my own spirit, you know, that's really the key, you know. So I think now I have an understanding of my situation and myself in a way that doesn't feed off the loss.
You have such a huge resilience, Lemn. That's what comes across. I wonder if we can take you back to that time when you're 12, and you could just explain a little bit about where that break with your foster family came from, what you felt about it at the time, and what you subsequently realised. And also, I wonder whether the first time that you wrote a poem, I believe, was when you were 12 years old.
Yeah.
And how much that situation that you were in fed into that early poetry.
If you can imagine, like, it's almost unimaginable, but if you can imagine, like, every family member that you've known disappearing at 12 years of age. My foster family were very religious, and they asked me if I loved them or not. My foster mother asked me, what was that? Yeah, she said, do you love us? It was a very big meeting with my foster parents.
You had this big meeting with your foster family in which your mother asked you a question.
At 12 years of age, I had a family meeting with my foster parents. And my foster mother asked me, what she said was, you don't love us, do you? And I said, yes, because, you know, obviously I did love them very much. And then and then my foster mum said, don't tell us now, come back to us tomorrow and give us your most honest and truthful answer, and read the Bible and search for an answer, you know, speak to God, etc. So I did all of those things, and I thought to myself also that if they were asking me if I loved them or not, then I mustn't love them, which, you know, because they're the ones who taught me what love is, right? So if they were asking me the question, then obviously, if I had to ask the question, then I didn't. But I would, I'd pray to God. This was my answer to them. You know, I would pray to God and I would ask God for forgiveness. And then I would learn to love them. And I came back the next day and I gave them this answer. You know, I've looked at the Bible, I've prayed to God, and I mustn't love you, but I'll learn to love you. It was theologically very sound, I felt, you know. And my foster mother looked wounded. And she said, you clearly don't want to be with us if that's what you believe, that you don't love us. And the next day, my social worker was waiting in the car outside the flat, the house, to take me away. And I lost everybody. I lost, you know, if you think of all of your family from childhood, aunties and uncles, mother and father, sisters and brothers, granddads, my granddads, you know, grandma, and all of the towns that they were from. I lost my school, my first girlfriend, my first love, you know. It may seem strange, you know, it obviously wasn't love, you know, we're just kids, but my first friend who was a girl, you know, I just disappeared. I was taken away. And they never wrote to me and they never visited me. And I lost everybody. And from that moment on, I was institutionalized. You would ask the question, what did you do, Lemn? Because that's the natural question to ask. You know, why was it so bad? I didn't do anything. I was a 12-year-old boy. But when they put me in there, I asked myself that same question. You know, so it was a betrayal. It was my first betrayal. And interestingly, your question about finding family and friends in later life, that betrayal actually dictated why I would not allow myself to feel close to anybody, because this is what happens when you get close to them, you know. And when we say, you know, friends are the family that you make, we make friends based on our experiences of our own families. That was the training ground, you know.
And Lemn, is it too trite to draw a line between what happened then and you starting to write then and what?
Oh my word, no, it's not. If you imagine that a little boy was thrown into a storm, and up around him, like the storm raged, and he couldn't see anywhere, and all he needed was like a tent to get inside and a sleeping bag so he could pull it over his head and he could sleep and dream, you know. And the storm might not be past tomorrow, but at least he'd reinvigorated himself by getting to sleep and then being able to wake and live. You know, poetry was my tent in the storm, you know. And when I went into children's homes, into the institutions, I wrote poems, and I felt a sense that I'm not crazy. This did happen. You know, this storm is happening around me, and this is not normal. I don't know what normal is, you know, but I promise, you know, like, close your eyes, you know, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home, you know. That's from the film Wizard of Oz, isn't it? And yeah, so poetry became this refuge, and it became a place where I could explore as well, you know, when it was essentially lockdown on a child. That's what they did to me. Yeah, and I've been writing ever since.
Thank goodness you have. I want to talk about another role that you have, as well as Booker Prize judge and award-winning poet and TV person and so many other things, festival director, and that is Chancellor of the University of Manchester. Just tell us a little bit about what that involves, particularly at the moment.
Well, particularly at the moment, being Chancellor of the University of Manchester means presenting awards at a live awards ceremony in 2 days' time for the Making a Difference Awards. And these are my favourite, it's my favourite ceremony at the University of Manchester, where we present awards to students, alumni, researchers, professors, lecturers, any member of the University of Manchester who has found an innovative way of solving problems within our communities, locally, nationally, and internationally. So that's in all the different departments of the university, health, humanities, etc. And it's so good.
So what sort of things do they do that do make it? And actually, is that badge? I recognise it as Manchester.
This is my Making a Difference badge. Actually, I want to do a screenshot of me just pointing at that like that, but I don't think I can. There you go, I did it.
Sound effects and everything.
Did you get that?
I did.
Well, it could be finding a vaccine. It could be setting up and working with NGOs in Ethiopia. It could be the student exchange program called the Equity and Merit Scholarship Award, which is all throughout a lot of East Africa, where students come to the university and study and contribute to the life of Manchester. And then the university does the same in Ethiopia. Equity and Merit, it's called. It's a beautiful title.
It's a difficult time for universities and educational institutions everywhere at the moment, isn't it? How is Manchester sort of organising it, supporting students, keeping going?
Well, we have got a very large international student population in Manchester, and we are doing our utmost to take care of them and their well-being. These are unusual times, and when we come back out of this, there will be a new normal. So the University of Manchester is trying to find the best solutions for what we believe are the greatest students in the world.
I'll go along with that because my daughter's one of them.
Yes.
I think what we're going to do is you very kindly agreed to read a poem which actually relates to that. So before we do that as a final treat, let me just say thanks very much to everybody for watching and being part of this conversation and for supporting the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair in this way. Do please subscribe to the YouTube channel, make some comments below. We'd love to hear what you think about this conversation. And also do keep an eye on Instagram, on the Abu Dhabi Book Fair Instagram following, because there'll be lots more coming up within this series. So yes, thank you very much for being here. Lemn, I'm going to let you finish with a poem that you've chosen that is relevant for the times, I think, very much.
Making a difference. We are shaking and breaking and waking in difference. We are quaking and taking and making a difference. We are working, observing, recording, researching. We're in, we're conferring, subverting, referring. We're counting the minutes, the moments, the loss, redressing the balance, addressing the cost. We're citing and fighting. It's all in the writing. The spark is igniting. In dark, we are lightning. We are breaking the brackets, the factors, the planets, in rackets and rackets of rackets in brackets, the systems, the victims, the damning, the scanning, the bias predicting, the heating, the beating and banning, to relentless censors and the damned and defenseless. Our words are action, the louder reaction. When no one seems to listen, we hear. When heads turn away, we volunteer. We count the cells in illness. We name the unnamed. We count the invisible. We make change. We stand tall. We rise to be counted above and with all we climb mountains, the skills we exchange, the breaking of chains, the action sustained, the makers of change. We are shaking and breaking and waking in difference. We are quaking and taking and making a difference.
Absolutely perfect. Lemn Sissa, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time. Please stay safe and we'll see you in person soon.
See you soon, and thank you, Julia Wheeler. Thanks a lot.